Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Fantasy Sports Talk here on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you guys yet again for tuning in to the show. To start off the week, we have an excellent show ahead for you, trying to vary as many segments as possible. I know last week was very IDP player profile heavy, and I know you guys like that, but I wanted to add some more fun segments to keep the show kind of fresh for the upcoming weeks ahead. We'll begin today's show with a couple of segments in the realm of fantasy basketball and football, not pertaining to IDP player profiles. We'll start off with NBA win totals, then we'll move on to some fantasy players who I believe will have more opportunities now that certain players in certain positions have gone from certain teams, and then of course we'll have our IDP player profiles at the end. But before we get into any of that, I do want to remind you guys to like, follow, and subscribe to the show and the network as a whole. There's a huge support to everyone involved. We also receive a ton of tips and donations as well, so if you do feel so inclined, please consider leaving them at the link in the description. GSMC.cloud is yet again a huge support to both me, my fellow podcasters, and ultimately the network as a whole. So anything you leave is greatly appreciated. Also consider leaving questions, comments, and concerns about the show, and they will be answered and addressed at the beginning of the next episode. Without further ado, let's jump right into a segment that should kind of ease us away from the mindset of IDP player profiles for just a little bit. Let's talk about some NBA win totals in the realm of the upcoming 24 to 25 NBA season. And when I look at these win totals, they are very specific. They are very linked to these teams who have overperformed or underperformed. And they're also kind of linked to what's been going on in this offseason, who's been moving around, what rumors have been fulfilled, and stuff of that nature. And so when I look at this list, there are some surprises, but not necessarily surprises in terms of high win totals, more low side win totals. And so, without further ado, let's just break down these win totals with no surprise as to who's number one. It is the Boston Celtics. This is their highest win total projection in the last couple of years. Not since the 2009 to 10 Boston Celtics team has their win total been this high, and that year they actually hit the under in terms of the win total. But they're sitting pretty at 58.5 wins. And if you look at this team, I think that they're primed to hit the over here. I think they got all their business for the offseason done. They retained the core of their team. All 12 players are under contract. They definitely have to worry down the line about certain second apron things and luxury tax, but that's coming in a couple years, so they don't have to necessarily focus on it on the here and now. So therefore, they should be the team to beat yet again, at least in the Eastern Conference. And I think that they are a 60-win team or above even. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how this prediction pans out, because I truly believe that the Celtics core is the best in the league. You don't have to be the best player at a certain position. You just have to be the best individual to help your team collective, and that's what the Celtics do. And there's no surprise as to why they are sitting number one in terms of win totals. However, coming into this year, this second place team was probably not expected. The Oklahoma City Thunder. They are definitely one of the up-and-coming teams in the league. In fact, the youngest team. The youngest team also to earn a number one seed in the NBA playoffs at 55.5 wins. That definitely does seem lofty for a team that truly exceeded expectations this year. And you would think that with a team this young, odds makers might have said, hey, they might regress to the mean a little bit. I don't know how long that they can sustain this success. But as of right now, this is a team that can compete in the West based off of what we saw last year. They have the pieces. They have the young, talented point guard and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have Jalen Williams, who's also a good shooter. They have Chet Holmgren. They added Isaiah Hartenstein. Fantastic addition for them. So this number could seem pretty low. They could also challenge the Celtics for the best record in the NBA. They definitely challenged for it in the Western Conference. They tied Nuggets for the most wins in the West last year. And so I truly believe that a lot of people might be underestimating younger teams like the Thunder in terms of sustainability. But I think that the Thunder, what's so special about them is they just have so many different players with so many different skill sets. Because of their youth, they can perform at such a tempo that really confounds opposing defenses and makes it a challenge for them to defend. So they're going to be not necessarily a hard team to gauge, but a hard team to truly wrap your head around in terms of the crowded landscape in the West. But I do think this win total could look a bit silly, especially if they vary in terms of how they look out of the gate. And then, in third place is another team that may surprise people because due to certain events of the offseason, they may not even be the second best team in the East, but I certainly think they could challenge that. It's the New York Knicks, 53.5 wins projected for the 2024-25 NBA season. Second highest win total projection in the Eastern Conference. 8 games higher than last year. And it ties their highest ever win total projection with the 97-98 Knicks team. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of hope about this New York Knicks team now. All these Villanova guys reuniting on the Knicks. Brunson, DiVincenzo, now Mikal Bridges after they acquired him from the Nets. But the thing that's going to matter for the New York Knicks in terms of wins is A, point production, because you can't always be Brunson-centric. And even though, you can add as many players around him who know him and have played with him and have experience with him, it's always going to be a tough ask, especially in terms of the philosophies of Tom Thibodeau, for everyone to buy into that culture and truly sustain their levels of success outside of a guy like Brunson, because Tom Thibodeau is always going to be focused on workload. And so, truly sustaining A, the point production they need, and B, the team defense, because that's going to be a strength for them. I think the Knicks can really challenge in the Eastern Conference. I know that the Sixers are going to be right there. Milwaukee will certainly have something to say about it, but at the end of the day, the East is the more top-heavy conference where all of these teams are going to be in the reckoning. And why not the Knicks? They have length, they have size, they have versatility. Losing certain players like Hardenstein is a big hit. But they still have the players that they believe can sustain them and lead to a bigger win total. And so, while I certainly think that in the grand scheme of things, some teams look better on paper than the Knicks definitely have the culture and the understanding of what their team identity is. And that's a lot more than some other teams on this list. Then we look at the Mavs in fourth with a 50.5% win total. And as long as, Luka and Kyrie are still the bell cows of that team offense, then the Mavs will always be around a higher win total. And I'll have the role players as well to sustain them, and we have to see if they develop. I really like Derek Lively, and I really like Daniel Gafford as well. Maxi Kleba, obviously injured, but I really like how they have built this team and how Jason Kidd has coached it. And they're going to be in the reckoning in terms of the crowded Western Conference. Maybe not the highest win total in the conference, but ultimately, they're going to be there and thereabouts because of their two stars. And I would love to see them sustain this level of success. I don't know if they'll go back to the finals, but they certainly are a playoff team in my book. Then you have a surprise Milwaukee tied for 7th in terms of win totals. Kind of this fall from grace, where you see them for a long while, them and the Celtics being these two teams who should compete for the highest win total in the conference. But right now, it doesn't look that way because Milwaukee really hasn't done much to surround Giannis with help. I mean, Middleton is aging. So is Brook Lopez. Everyone seems to be aging around him, and their best skills aren't translating because of their aging. And so there they sit in terms of win total projections. And then we look at other teams. The Lakers, let's see how their kind of firestorm of a season will get off. Will J.J. Redick be the right choice of coach? Will the Bron and Bronny dynamic really be a center point that muddies what the Lakers can be this year? Will Anthony Davis stay healthy and stay dominant? That's the big question, because the Lakers are a franchise who the nation has its eyes upon every single year. And at 44.5 wins projected, it's not their highest they've ever had, and it's definitely not a place where they want to be. And so the Lakers are definitely going to have to figure out a way to exceed expectations this year, because they missed Dan Hurley, they hired J.J. Redick as the coach, and now they have so many different personalities in that locker room that a guy like J.J. Redick's going to have to handle. And so we'll definitely have to see. But in terms of the lowest win total, it is the Brooklyn Nets. Sorry to say, if you live in the Brooklyn area or near it like I do, then you know that this team definitely has fallen from grace a little bit. They had Durant, Kyrie, Harden at one point, and now all of them are gone. Gaunt's Mikal Bridges as well, who really tried his best to sustain them after the loss of those three players. But right now, I really don't think that Brooklyn is the team they are. However, 19.5 wins does seem like a little bit too little for an NBA team. I think they'll win more than that. But ultimately, I think that it is kind of judgment time for this Brooklyn Nets core, and I don't see any path to where they win at least more than 30 games. I think they could win more than 19.5. But that will just about do it for this time. Coming next, we will give you some of my players who I believe will have more opportunities in terms of fantasy projections. I think that these players have spots available to them, and they will take them and seize them. That will be our next segment coming up on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free.
Hello everyone and welcome back yet again to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. We are in the portion of today's show where we are transitioning to our IDP player profiles for the day. I promise you that we have 3 exciting secondary players, each in their own right, offering something to your IDP fantasy teams, should you choose to select them. Without further ado, let's start off with the corner who had a breakout year, kind of an unexpected year, breaking a personal record in terms of his play in the secondary, and that is, of course, Mr. DaRon Bland. And I think that it definitely was shocking because DaRon Bland in that secondary didn't necessarily have to be so prolific last year, because you have a guy in Trayvon Diggs who you really trust, and you were just really looking for supplementary play from other corners, and that's not what DaRon Bland gave you. In fact, he gave you exemplary play. He was a CB1 for all intents and purposes. It's the reason why he's one of those corners who say, well, I really don't see many problems or issues with him, but in that scope of that defense, you definitely have to be wary, because it's no coincidence that both of these players in 2 different seasons had very high interception totals. And that's something to note out. Is this kind of like a your turn, my turn kind of thing? Or is this truly one of the best CB duos in the league? So without further ado, let's jump into DaRon Bland's stats and why from here on out his career is going to be very important in how he develops. Throughout his career, he's accumulated 206 fantasy points. Obviously, last year was his best year with 137. He had 53 solo tackles last year, 3 tackles for loss, 15 passes defended, 9 interceptions, was first in the league, and of course, 5 of them were returned for touchdowns, and that was an NFL record. And so, what I love, like I said, about the Cowboys secondary is that it's kind of becoming one of those secondaries where you feel as if they have the space for one of their guys to have an off day or an off year, and it still won't matter. And we've talked about their defensive front as well, and the excellence that they offer there, and so much diversity in who they have up front, with guys like Lawrence Adigazua, and especially Micah Parsons, who's always going to be in the reckoning for Defensive Player of the Year, might I add. DaRon Bland and Trayvon Diggs definitely have a feeling that they understand that the Cowboys' defense is offering them so many opportunities. And because of the strength up front, they also have a lot more freedom to determine how they want to play. And that could lead to opportunities for them both, because that's the caveat I have. How will both of them pan out? How will both of them be successful? Because 2022 was Trayvon Diggs' year, and last year it was DaRon Bland's year. How do both of them now become the players in the secondary that are truly going to make them so fearsome, because both of them can handle the pressure? And so, figuring that out may just stem down to them tampering with certain coverages, figuring out what works for them, figuring out, okay, when can I pick and choose my spots to blitz, because I truly think that can be very helpful in terms of the pass rush as well. And figuring out ultimately which one of them is more comfortable in moments where they might have to take a back seat. And so DaRon Bland, especially, since this was kind of out of the blue, certainly has to focus on developing his game enough to understand that perhaps Trayvon Diggs also needs his space and freedom. And so I actually expect to see a lot of zone coverage out of both or even just one of these guys to kind of jump passing lanes and allow the other guy to really focus on man-to-man, because a lot of DaRon Bland's kind of coverages and the reason why he had so many interceptions returns was his interpretation of space and how he used zone coverage to the best of his ability. Especially in a 4-3 system, when you have so much pressure up the middle, up the front, you can have a lot more freedom in how you move as a corner. And so, if one of these guys plays more zone, another plays more man-to-man, then both of their production can go up because one will probably have more looks at picks, and another guy will probably have more chances in terms of passes defended. And thus the distribution of wealth will not lean too heavily towards one guy. Now, considering the fact that the Dallas Cowboys defensive front gets the most love, it will also have to stem from how the front plays, because it's all good to understand the secondary, because the secondary definitely will get some looks, and they definitely want to have everything set up should teams want to pass on them more often. However, the defensive front definitely has a say in how this whole kind of cornerback secondary scheme plays out, because when you have that level of penetration, the level of depth that the Cowboys have in their defensive line, it certainly offers you the ability to send more people forward. It certainly offers you the opportunity for all these players to use power moves, to penetrate into the backfield, to stack blockers, to give other players more opportunities, and so on and so forth. So, it definitely leaves a lot of questions about how you utilize the secondary. And going back to my points about them playing more zone, I think it makes more sense, because if you send the front more often than not, you're kind of limiting the space that quarterbacks have to throw into. You're limiting the window in time and opportunities for these corners, for these quarterbacks to throw into. And when you do that, thus, should the quarterback even get a pass off, it limits the amount of time he has, and thus the corners can pounce, like Bland, like Diggs. And so, should the Cowboys, especially in more late game situations, or even situations where teams are driving to take the lead, no matter which quarter the game is in, decide on later downs to blitz the football. That's where I think most of their production comes from. That's where I think DaRon Bland and Trayvon Diggs will find their level of balance in later downs. As that's more likely the time when quarterbacks will exploit them setting the house. And so, even though it's not necessarily, the best kind of way to mete out who is responsible for what, it certainly affords you the time and space to understand what the other guy is doing. And I really think that DaRon Bland is the better guy in zone. And ultimately, when time comes for late game situations in the latter stages of the year and say both of these guys have figured it out, that's where stats get padded. That's where these corners truly add value in terms of IDP. Because in terms of IDP, DaRon Bland is a treasure. This is a big if, because he could not replicate the season, and either Trayvon Diggs or someone else steps up, or none of them step up. And so this could look silly, but in terms of IDP, you gotta love the stats. And sometimes the game is not all about stats. Sometimes it's actually about producing, if you know what I mean. And it's more about, the all-round play of a certain player. But in IDP leagues, you strip all that away and focus on, hey, which guy is ultimately going to get me the most stats, and which is going to add up to create wins for me. And DaRon Bland certainly, like I said, is a big if. If he can maintain that success, then he's a special gem that you should consider drafting in IDP leagues. Now, there are more caveats than I believe even myself should think, because of, like what I said. It certainly seems like a very your turn, my turn kind of situation in Dallas. It's not a bad one to have, considering your front. It certainly feels like every year it seems like one of these guys is going to be significantly better than the other in terms of stats and production. And so, who knows? It could be Trayvon Diggs this year. But what I really think is pivotal for DaRon Bland is that in 2 years' time, after this year, in 2025 to 26, he's going to be potentially an unrestricted free agent. Can he put together 2 solid years? Or can he put together just one? Because I think the Cowboys really want this corner grouping to stay together for quite some time, because it's truly special. But they have to kind of feel some level of disappointment that in certain situations, one performs better than the other, and significantly so. Not saying Trayvon Diggs had a bad year last year either, but he just didn't live up to DaRon Bland and what he did. And so, I think that the next 2 years of DaRon Bland's career are going to be very important. And how you measure him against especially another good secondary player in Trayvon Diggs and how he plays is going to be very integral to how the Cowboys will ultimately want to approach him contract-wise. And if I were you in IDP leagues, I would potentially say wait till next year for DaRon Bland. Wait till next year when he's in a contract year, because that might be the year he breaks out. But after a breakout year last year that was completely out of the blue, why not take a chance on him? And that's all there is to it. But that will just about do it for this segment. Coming next, we have another secondary player at the free safety position. You very rarely find as solid free safeties as this guy I'm going to talk about next, who's moving to a division rival this year, and I think will take a lot of what made him so great on his former team with him. We'll be right back with that segment after the break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available every